everybody? Welcome to the Let's Talk Q&A show. This is the weekly show where I answer all of your burning questions. And I want to thank everybody who sent in questions this week because I asked you guys at the end of last week's show to send in as many questions as you could. And you guys sure obliged with that. And I really do appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for sending in all those questions. So without further ado, we're just going to dive right into these questions. And the first one is from our channel director, Mr. Smelly Potato. And he said, what are your favorite movies for each one of these actors? Number one, Robin Williams. Robin Williams, one of the only actors who ever passed away, or just really any celebrity, who actually really got me emotional when they passed away, because Robin Williams was kind of there the entire time I was growing up. Like in the 1990s, this guy was putting out a movie each and every single year. I mean, even movies like Flubber. I can remember, I think it was 1996 or 1997, going to the movie theaters the day before Thanksgiving with my family and seeing that movie and really enjoying it. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen it since, but still, it was Robin Williams. It's the guy who was in Mrs. Doubtfire, one of my favorite childhood movies, and a movie I still love to this very day is Jumanji. But it's really hard to pick against Good Will Hunting because that really is his best performance. And I just rewatched this movie probably about a month ago with my wife, and it's incredible how good and perfectly cast he is in this movie. Because, you know, the guy finds the perfect blend between comedy and drama. He can do full-fledged comedy, but it's always those emotional moments that really show you how good of an actor Robin Williams was. Like, it wouldn't work as well. Like Mrs. Doubtfire wouldn't work as well if it was anybody else but Robin Williams, because you would hate that guy. But he's so good at playing that guy that you kind of you don't feel bad for Sally Field until you're an adult and you realize, you know, he is probably a really bad husband. And, you know, he doesn't deserve to be forgiven for all the stuff that he's done. Sally Field has to end up being the backbone of the family. So you understand where she's coming from when she wants to divorce Robin Williams. Their marriage wasn't going to work until he grew up, and this is the kind of push he needed to into adulthood and raise his kids the right way. But he decides, hey, I'll dress up like an old lady and babysit them. It all works out in the end, and Mrs. Doubtfire is a classic comedy of the 1990s, but it's really hard to say that his best performance isn't in 1997's Good Will Hunting. Even won him an Academy Award. Next up, John Candy. For me, it's always going to be Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He is perfect as Del Griffith. You know, he gets to play the more comedic role to Steve Martin's straight man, even though they're both great comedians. That movie doesn't work without both of them, but John Candy is perfect in that movie. His speech early in the film where, you know, he's talking about how people like him and how much of an asshole Steve Martin is, and he's like, I like me. My wife likes me. My customers like me. Like, that's a beautiful speech. So, again, finding that perfect blend between absolutely hysterical and tugging at your heartstrings. And I also really love Uncle Buck and really anything that John Candy popped up in. Again, being a 1990s kid, I always loved Cool Runnings. And that movie, again, just does not work without John Candy. Passed away way too young. He was one of those great actors. Walter Matthau. Now, Walter Matthau is somebody who I found, you know, kind of in, like, he plays an older man in a lot of 1980s and 1990s movies, but the guy had a great career before that. The movie I always think of is Bad News Bears from the 1970s, which had a remake that I saw in theaters. Actually, I think it's directed by Richard Linklater, of all people. It's very forgotten about, starring Billy Bob Thornton, but you watch that movie and then you go and watch the original. The original is an absolute classic, so that's the best part about that movie, in my opinion. Obviously, a lot of people probably pick The Odd Couple, but Bad News Bears is more of my speed. The next one up is Chris Farley, another actor who passed away at a way too young age. And how do you not pick Tommy Boy? I mean, you know, he didn't really get to be the leading man in a lot of movies because he just passed away so young. I always will think about his Saturday Night Live skits way before I think about his movies. But Tommy Boy is one of those movies that crossed over. It's way funnier than Black Sheep. Black Sheep has some really funny scenes in it, like the Dodge Charger scene. You know, he's like, it's got a Hemi in her, and he's like, you know how fast you were going? And, you know, like what, like 80, 90 miles an hour? He's like, 7. Like, that's just the classic clip. But the rest of the movie, it's just fine. Whereas Tommy Boy, it's a stone cold classic. You know, obviously him and David Spade just had great chemistry together, really close, best friends. David Spade, when Chris Farley passed away, said he couldn't go to the funeral because he could not go to a place where Chris was going to be in a box. And I get that. I really do. Somebody who's, like, you know, really avoids, like, wakes and funerals. It's tough because the people that are there. It's hard to go there knowing that they're up front in the box. It feels very strange. I'm somebody who really resists those types of situations because it can change your perspective, I guess, is the best way to put it. Even though you're trying to be respectful, I can understand where David Spade was coming from when he said that. But either way, got a little dark there. Tommy Boy's hysterical. Next up, James Caan. So this one might surprise a lot of people. This is the guy who was in The Godfather, but I'll always say Thief is his best performance. He is phenomenal in Thief. I mean, that's just a very underrated Michael Mann movie, beautifully shot with a great synthesizer score in there. But James Caan, that was the role he was born to play. He just has that perfect amount of anger in him. You do still feel sympathetic towards him because the system is just not going to let him get ahead because, he was a thief. He was a criminal. Are we going to get on with this big romance? Like, he wants to move on in his life. He wants to live a straight life, but that's just not going to happen for him. That is not in the cards because of the decisions he made before that. James Caan, a lot of people might just remember him from Elf, or from Elf or The Godfather, but this guy had an insanely big career. Misery obviously is another big one for him. Maybe a lot of people would pick Misery, but for me, it's always going to be Thief. That's a great question, Mr. Smelly Potato, who also asked one other question. Are you going to get Paramount Scares Volume 2. So this is coming out, actually it might have already come out at the time you guys are watching this, and the only movie I really wanted to get in there was Breakdown, and that's supposed to be getting a solo release, but it's supposed to be coming out this week, and it's not on the calendar anymore, so I'm not too sure what had happened with that. That was the only movie I really wanted in there on 4K Blu-ray. Friday the 13th Part 2 is not one of my favorites, and World War Z already has a 4K Blu-ray release, so I was just really excited for Breakdown. So no, I'm going to take a pass on this one. It looks like they put a lot of effort into it, and it looks beautiful, but still, I just really want a Breakdown, and that's getting a solo release, so I'll just get Breakdown. So those were great questions, Mr. Smelly Potato. Thanks so much, buddy. Next question's from Rico Gomez, and he wrote, what's a good movie that you saw in the theater, made you feel like you like it, but never want to ever see it again? Mine is Joker. That's what Rico Gomez put in. He said Joker, and I understand that. I rewatched Joker for the sequel that just came out. Still haven't seen the sequel, and I've heard nothing but bad things. But I rewatched Joker, and I understand that, man. I had seen it in theaters actually 2 days in a row. I really enjoyed it, but that is a depressing as hell movie. But man, it really does build and build and build to a great conclusion. Is it what I'm going to be revisiting anytime soon again? Probably not. I took 5 years off from seeing it. Really enjoyed it this time around. But again, it's one of those movies, very depressing, very hard to rewatch. But a movie that also has a very depressing ending, and it's very hard for me to rewatch. I really appreciated this movie when I saw it in theaters. Bradley Cooper's A Star Is Born. Just phenomenal work in there by both Bradley Cooper, who directed the hell out of that movie, and Lady Gaga. I actually really enjoyed the music. I will listen to the soundtrack for this movie way more than I will rewatch it, because I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters. I really enjoyed it, but the ending to that movie is very tough. It's one of the actual harder endings that I struggled with, and it's one that because I know how it ends up, I don't really want to go back and rewatch it. Try not to spoil it for people who haven't seen it. Like last year when we got Maestro, I've already seen that movie 3 times, directed by Bradley Cooper, and it only came out less than a year ago, or at this point, we're moving in on a year. But that movie I felt like is more rewatchable than A Star Is Born, just because the way that movie ends, it's really, really tough. But again, those performances are great. It's a really well-made movie. It's just one that I'm probably never going to watch again. So that was a great question, Rico. Thank you so much, buddy. From Will89098, what's your thoughts about the whispers that Warner Brothers are planning a box set in December? None of the movies in question has nothing in common. It's very strange. So I'm not entirely too sure what this box set is gonna be. Warner Brothers is notorious for releasing box sets with a bunch of different movies in it, and them just not having any sort of reason or for them to be together. Last year with their 100th anniversary, they had a ton of different box sets, and then we kind of just combined genres, and then they had that big box set. So I'm not too sure what Warner Brothers is going to be doing in December. I can understand why they would do it. December, the Christmas season. Of course, they want as many movies as they can out there for people to buy for their family members who might be physical media collectors. But, it's probably just a smorgasbord of a bunch of different films that they're going to put together that are just maybe Warner Brothers classics, maybe a bunch of Warner Brothers films that came out over the 2024 year that, hey, we'll just put them in one big box set. I don't really know if it's going to include like North by Northwest, which is coming out in November, or Blazing Saddles, because, Warner Brothers did release a lot of classic films this year, and are going to continue to release a lot of classic films on 4K Blu-ray with very bad, in my opinion, cover art, but still, they are going to be going out of their way to do that. I'm not too sure what this box set is going to be, but that's still pretty cool that they are going to be doing that. I'm curious to see if that gets officially announced anytime soon. We are getting all of our December announcements, so we're kind of getting a pretty good idea of what December is going to look like for us this upcoming holiday season. Now, Warner Brothers holiday box set, including all of their Christmas movies that they've released on 4K Blu-ray, I would definitely be into that. I won't pick it up because I already got them all, but that's still a fantastic idea. The Warner Brothers Christmas box set. I can see it now. That was a great question, buddy. I really appreciate that. And the next question is from Kevin Krueger, and he said, what are your top 10 zombie films? And it is spooky season, so there's no better time to answer this question than right now. So I'm not the biggest zombie guy in the world. If I was a subgenre of horror that I don't really enjoy, mainly because it just got overblown. You know, when The Walking Dead came out, you know, that was it. Everybody was in full-blown zombie mode. We've kind of shifted away from that, but you kind of saw it coming. Video games like, what was that? Dead Rising came out in 2006. The Resident Evil games. Like, there was just so many zombie video games coming out, and now we just got so many zombie movies coming out at the same time. You know, Shaun of the Dead and all that. So it just kind of felt like we were getting overwhelmed with zombie films. And I just always have felt like there's not too much you can add to that. But there are 10 great zombie films, and I made a list for this. So for me, at number 10, I have... Well, I got to find the list first, guys, right? At number 10, I got Army of the Dead. This was directed by Zack Snyder, came out a few years ago. It starred Batista. This is just a fun, all-around zombie movie. It takes place in Vegas. I just had an absolute blast with this one. You can watch it on Netflix. If this came out on 4K Blu-ray, I would pick it up right now. And I believe there were also sequels that were announced for this. I don't know exactly what the hell happened with that. You know, people were excited about this movie when it first came out. You know, that's something with streaming. You know, everyone gets really excited for that weekend, and then we kind of forget about it. That's the big difference between streaming and theaters. You know, obviously, you know, things have changed in that kind of realm, but still, back then, this movie came out for like a weekend. Everyone's talking about it, and then you just forget about it. Don't forget about Army of the Dead. It was great. Next up, I have at number 9, Warm Bodies. This is like a rom-com zombie film, and I really enjoyed this one. I actually had a 4K Blu-ray come out last year. I actually gave the 4K Blu-ray away because it's not one I plan on revisiting, but I still really enjoyed this movie. I think it's a fun one that I can watch like every few years, but it's not one I'll watch every single year. This one also just kind of had a certain tone to it that felt different from other zombie movies. At number 8, I actually grabbed the 4K Blu-ray for this because it's a great zombie movie, and it's kind of a spiritual sequel in Italy to Dawn of the Dead. You know, George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead that came out a year before, but this is Zombie 2, I believe it's called everywhere else, but here in Italy, I think it was just called Zombie, and this is the 4K Blu-ray that Blue Underground did. Now, I want to just really talk about this 4K Blu-ray because it's absolutely stunning visually. You have to just see the movie for the 4K Blu-ray itself. The movie, you know, it can drag a little bit if you're watching it, but it's still a great film in its own right. And it's one that I definitely can recommend you check out. But check out this 4K Blu-ray if you can. And then at number 7, I got the first Zombieland movie. Not the second one. Second one is fine. But the first one, I had a lot of fun when this one came out in theaters. I mean, the cast is stacked. Woody Harrelson. I'm always a big fan of Emma Stone. She's my favorite actress. Jesse Eisenberg. You know, he's hit or miss for me. He's really good in this. You also get Abigail Breslin, and one of the greatest cameos in film history, Bill Murray, pops up in this movie. This got a huge pop in theaters. I think it was 2009 when this came out. It's just an all-around fun movie. Zombieland 2 is not bad, but it's nowhere near as good as the original. And at number 6, I got Day of the Dead. Now, this is the sequel to Dawn of the Dead. Came out in the 1980s. What I really love about this movie is actually its score. The tone is also really well done. It's not as good as Dawn of the Dead, but it's still really, really good. At number 5, I got Wreck, and this is one of the rare found footage movies that I just absolutely love. Spanish language horror film that actually ended up getting a US remake. Just watch the Spanish language one. It's much, much, much better. You know, these people don't realize they're about to get into a zombie situation. Our lead character, you know, she's just a reporter, and she's following along with these firemen going to this situation. They don't think it's going to be anything big. She's really there to report on what the firemen do, and it turns out to be a way bigger situation that they were expecting, with some really shocking moments in it, and then it ends up being a zombie movie out of nowhere. At number 4, I have Shaun of the Dead, directed by Edgar Wright, and this is the movie that made Edgar Wright famous. Before this, you know, he made movies, but he wasn't as big time as he was. I think this is 2004. Obviously, it's 2004 because it's got a 20th anniversary release, and it's got a 20th anniversary 4K Blu-ray coming out in December. But, you know, Shaun of the Dead, it's a play on Dawn of the Dead. It's a satire of all of those zombie movies, and it's just so well done. It's a lot of fun. It's not my favorite Edgar Wright movie. I love the follow-up Hot Fuzz a lot more, which is just satiring all of those 80s and 90s action movies, but if you wanted to see a satire of all of the, Dawn of the Dead movies, all the zombie movies like that, you can't go wrong with Shaun of the Dead. Nick Frost and Simon Pegg have great chemistry, and it's just a lot of fun. And number 3, I have 28 Days Later. Now, this was a big deal, directed by Danny Boyle, starring Cillian Murphy. Obviously 28 days after a zombie apocalypse happens, a guy wakes up in a hospital, and then this is where we find out that zombies, they can run. And this is where tone and atmosphere really takes it to the next level, because this movie will get under your skin, just the way it's shot. It's just much faster paced than a lot of other zombie movies, just really match up with how fast the zombies are. And it got a sequel, and it's going to be supposedly getting another sequel 28 years later very soon, so really excited about that. But I don't think it'll be able to match how good the original 28 Days Later was. And then at number 2, I got Dawn of the Dead, the one directed by George A. Romero, the sequel to Night of the Living Dead, one of the greatest horror movies of all time, really put, zombies on the map. Now, Night of the Living Dead, it's fine in its own right. It's really good for the time, especially, and, made a star out of George A. Romero, and if it wasn't for that movie, we wouldn't get Dawn of the Dead. And again, this is a movie that has 3 different cuts, one of them done by Dario Argento. I really prefer the original cut more because I like the score a little bit more to that. Not that Argento's score is bad or anything, it's actually fantastic, but that kind of removes some of the comedy elements. I kind of still like those comedy elements in Dawn of the Dead. Has some of the greatest special effects you've ever seen done by Tom Savini. Definitely check out Dawn of the Dead if you haven't seen it. It has a great second sight 4K Blu-ray release, one of the best 4K Blu-ray releases out there. So definitely check out Dawn of the Dead, which brings us to our number 1, Return of the Living Dead. So you guys know how much of a fan I am of 80s movies and a great horror comedy out there, and this really combines horror and comedy in the best way possible, and it just happens to be a zombie movie as well. I just love brains, pain, send more cops. Love all that stuff. The movie's just absolutely hysterical. The music's great. And the 4K Blu-ray from Scream Factory is just absolutely fantastic. So I can highly recommend Return to the Living Dead. That was a great question, Kevin. Thank you so much. And next week, we're going to answer Kevin's question about the top 10 vampire movies, just to continue on our spooky season questions. Thanks so much, Kevin. I appreciate that. Next questions are from Rogue1677, and he wrote, what are your least favorite A24 movies? And this is actually really hard to do, because A24, for the most part, has never really missed. They got some movies out there that might be a little bit lower quality, but for the most part, their movies are always really good. I can understand why some people might not like certain movies, like the movie Lamb. That might freak a little people. That might freak some people out, but it's still a great movie. One thing I want to talk about real quick, an A24 movie that just kind of came and went like years ago, I want to say like 2019, is a movie called Waves. Check that movie out if you haven't seen it. And try and go into it blind, because I really think that movie is structured very uniquely, and it's also filmed fantastically. So definitely check that movie if you haven't seen it. And going to my worst one, this might surprise a lot of people, and that is going to be The Green Knight. Now, this is one I could not wait to see in theaters. I couldn't get on board with the pacing of it, and I'm fine with slowly paced movies, but this one I really couldn't get into it. It's still shot beautifully, and I really like how the movie ends, but I didn't love the entire journey getting there. And this movie is a journey, but that if I have to pick one, and again, I still think this is a very well-made movie. It's just personally for me, not my favorite A24 movie of all the A24 movies that I've seen, which turns out to be a lot. And the next question he asked was, best A24 film on 4K Blu-ray. So actually, I'm sure this would have been my number 1, but I'm going to tell this story again because it's kind of funny. I love The Lighthouse. That's my favorite A24 film, directed by Robert Eggers. Love that movie. And, I couldn't wait. It got an A24 4K Blu-ray release in the UK. You guys got it from Arrow Video, so I pre-ordered it from their website right here, right? Well, this is the Blu-ray because my dumbass actually clicked Blu-ray instead of 4K Blu-ray and didn't follow up on that. So I was disappointed when I got it, thought A24 fucked up. Turns out I'm the idiot, and I bought the Blu-ray. So I'm going to probably buy the Arrow Video 4K Blu-ray just so I have, the extras on here, and then I can get the 4K Blu-ray, and then I have both of them. So that's not my number 1 because of that. So at number 1, I'm going to have to probably put Talk to Me. This is a great film that came out last year. The 4K Blu-ray is gorgeous, but the movie itself, it keeps dragging me back. It's that good of a movie. Now, as far as, 4K Blu-rays, I bought directly from A24 because you can buy directly from A24 a lot of good movies, and they do great transfers. But I also bought this movie last year, showing up on 4K Blu-ray. Reviewed it here on the channel. One of the worst reviews as far as, views go here on the channel ever. So people really didn't like this movie, but it is still a great 4K Blu-ray. And one of the most anticipated 4K Blu-rays that is coming soon. So I know you guys know how excited I am about the Terminator coming in November, or even also in November and December, because there's two releases, one in the UK and one in the United States through Criterion. Paris, Texas, two of my top 5 favorite films of all time are coming to 4K Blu-ray. So if I had to pick another movie that's coming out, just because I don't want to talk about those movies, because, you know, you guys know how much I like them, but Paramount Presents is going to be re-releasing this Paramount Presents for the movie Ghost from 1990, the highest grossing film of 1990, actually, which might surprise a lot of people, but Ghost was a phenomenon. Whoopi Goldberg won an Academy Award for this movie. You get the Swayze Express, Demi Moore's bad haircut in this movie. I love Ghost. I saw it at 5 years old. Shouldn't have seen that movie at 5 years old. I believed a lot of what happens when you die. I based a lot of that on the movie Ghost. I thought that's actually what happened because, again, saw that movie in kindergarten. I'm not a religious person, nor is my family, so I thought, okay, this makes sense. They're telling me what's going to happen when I die. If I go to hell, I'm going to get dragged down there by some really bad CGI or whatever the hell they did. I don't know how they did this in 19. Maybe it's just matte. I don't know. Forget it. I have no idea how they did those effects. But either way, I'll get dragged down by these freaking guys. All those noises that they're making. Loved how they made fun of that in Family Guy. Or, you know, you get to go into the light after you know, take care of your unfinished business. I based way too much of what I thought would happen on the movie Ghost. But either way, or I still love that movie when I watch it to this very day. So I can't wait to see that movie on 4K Blu-ray. That comes out on October 22nd, the same week as The Sixth Sense and Signs on 4K Blu-ray. So for me, those three are just, I can't wait. That's also the same day you get Twisters and Deadpool and Wolverine. So much movies coming out on 4K Blu-ray that week. Not to mention what happens the week after. So that's another one. And one you really want on 4K Blu-ray next year. And until it comes, because actually, believe it or not, if you guys look at my list of movies I want on 4K Blu-ray for 2024 that we did back in January, and I do that list every single year. On that list, you know, a lot of those movies have come to 4K Blu-ray this year, so it's going to be a very different list next year. We've been very fortunate, I think, in 2024 with our 4K Blu-ray releases, but I still want a lot of those, you know, Fox movies on 4K Blu-ray, and the big one still being Fight Club. I really want Fight Club on 4K Blu-ray. We're finally getting a lot of Fincher movies. We know Seven's coming from 4K Blu-ray. There's this rumored box art, by the way. I didn't talk about it on the Let's Talk Physical Media show because, you know, it's not confirmed, and I saw some people knocking it. If it's just this plain black case, I'm actually okay with that. I don't want them doing anything stupid, and Warner Brothers, sometimes they'll do some stupid stuff with their box art. Plain is fine with me. I saw some people knocking it, but plain is more than fine with me. I just want the movie on 4K Blu-ray. I can't wait for it. And, you know, we're getting Zodiac later this year, so, you know, we're finally getting them, but we still need Fight Club. Still need Fight Club. Criterion has The Game. I wouldn't mind that on 4K Blu-ray as well, but Fight Club, that's a big one, and I hope that's the one finally coming to 4K Blu-ray. So that's a great question, Rogue One. Thank you so much, buddy. Next question is from Dark Room Reviews. He has a great YouTube channel you guys should check out as well. And he asks, are you a fan of scary doll movies? You know, I'm indifferent on them. I've seen, you know, what was that movie that came out last year? Was it Maggie? I can't remember what that one that came out last year was, but that was a pretty good one. I love the Child's Play movies like 1, 2, and 3, and then Bride of Chucky. And then there's been some other ones that have been put out there, like Abigail, the Abigail trilogy of movies. They've all been fine. I'm not really scared of them. It's actually really hard to scare me. I wish movies would scare me more. But, you know, for some reason, I was never somebody who got scared of scary doll movies. And speaking of Seed of Chucky, the first time I saw that movie, there was a guy there petrified, a buddy of mine. Obviously, I haven't seen him since, but buddy of mine at the time, petrified of Chucky. He was covering his eyes. I'm like, how are you covering your eyes for this movie? This movie's just terrible, but he was petrified of scary dolls. I don't know if something happened to him or not, but he was petrified. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this movie's god-awful. I can understand if we were watching, like, the first Child's Play movie. But anyway, that's a great question, Dark Room Reviews. Thank you so much, buddy. And then this is from the Unknown Seeker. Yes, one of the worst movies you've seen that was terrible, and one of the best comedy dramas you've seen. So, you know, as far as bad movies go, I'm somebody who, I try and see the positive in all of things. So I'm, you know, just somebody who just tries not to be that negative when it comes to film. I love film, so I can usually find something. Maybe it's the cinematography. Like I was talking about The Green Knight. Didn't really enjoy my time with that movie, but it was so beautiful that, you know, at least I got something out of that movie. Like, the only movie I can honestly say, and we've talked about this movie a lot here on the channel, because I can't believe this movie exists. It's so bad. And, you know, people talk about Madam Web earlier this year. I still think that Morbius starring Jared Leto that came out, I think, in 2019 2022, I still think that movie is worse than that. That is one of the worst movies I have ever seen in my life. And, I give a lot of, I'll give a pass to a lot of, low budget movies. There might be worse movies out there, but, they're working with really small budgets. This movie is made by Sony. This movie shouldn't be that bad. I get being disappointed, but this is just an all around bad movie. So I always find that when a studio puts out a bad movie, that's more shocking than when somebody with $100,000 to make a movie. I understand why that movie turns out bad, but Morbius, this movie just had no business being this bad, and it still hurts me that movie even exists. So that's the one I'd still say is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and it's just a horrible theater experience. Halloween Ends is right up there as well. That's a horrible theater experience for me as well. And now we have 2 more questions to end this week. I thought these were great questions from Sprazy110. It's just questions that I've actually wanted to talk about here on the channel for a while, so they're both great. The first one is from him, and he wrote, "Do you ever feel guilty about buying movies?" I ask because sometimes I feel like my priorities are off with how much I spend on movies, but I know some people can do it in a more responsible way. So this is actually something I can fully relate to you, Sprazy, because I'm in the same boat as you. I do feel guilty spending all this money on movies. I'm somebody who owns a house, I'm married, I got 2 dogs, so I can't necessarily spend all my money on movies. My bank account just won't allow it because I have other things that I have to prioritize before I buy movies. Now, I still will overspend on movies. I've put myself in some pretty bad debt in the past buying movies because it's the thing I truly love most in this world. You only live once, so it's always what I tell myself is that, this is the thing I love most in this world is watching movies. And, especially watching older movies being restored to 4K Blu-ray. I still love going to the movies all the time. It's still one of my favorite things to do. But I've just come to the conclusion, and something about me is I still prefer older films over modern day films. I just feel like they had a lot more to say. I love the creativity in these movies. I love the physical and practical sets that they had to use, the physical and practical effects. I love all of that stuff. So going back and seeing a movie that was filmed in the 1970s, restoring it to beautiful 4K Blu-ray, for me, that's just something that you can't replace, and the only way you can experience that is by spending all this money on great TV, a great sit-down system, and then buying all of those movies, which as you can see right now are getting more and more expensive. So you can't get everything you want. I would love to, but it's just it's just impossible with how much it costs. So you have to pick and choose. And I'm trying to become more responsible as well, and picking and choosing because I don't want to, money's really tight. Everything costs a lot more right now. Just buying regular old-fashioned groceries, that's taking a lot from money that I would usually spend on movies. I'm a regular guy. I don't make a real big living off of YouTube. In fact, I can make what I make on YouTube just by Uber eating once or twice a month. I can make my entire YouTube income from that. But this is my passion. My passion is reviewing 4K Blu-rays here on the channel, doing these shows. So for me, I have to still prioritize my income over buying movies just because I can't do that to my wife. I have the dogs, the house, that stuff has to always come first. So, me working a regular job, all that money is going to pay for all that stuff first, and then I can buy movies. Thankfully, we have Afterpay and all Shop Pay and all that stuff now. It makes it a lot easier to buy movies. Sometimes you guys will see reviews for movies 2 weeks later. It's just because I'll Shop Pay stuff, and that way I'll get it all in one big bundle from the Atomic Movie Store because they're not going to send it until they get everything in, and then I'll review the movies here on the channel. I used to want to pre-order them and get them on day one, but I honestly can't afford that anymore. I can't buy every single movie on day one. I can't get the collector's edition. It's just become too expensive. And like I said, YouTube doesn't necessarily pay that much, so I just have to pick and choose what movies I'm going to review here on the channel for you guys. And for you as well, Sprazy, you got to pick and choose what's best for you. And wait for sales. I know that can be a little tough, especially with FOMO. Sales really are a big deal, and when they roll around, that's when you can scoop up all the movies that you've been waiting for. Eventually those studio releases that are $35 right out of the gate, they'll drop down below $10 if you wait 2 years. But if you wait even a year, they'll be $20, and you'll save some good money that way. As long as you can wait. There's always those certain movies. I'll always go out of my way for the movies I truly love, and I know I'm going to appreciate that 4K Blu-ray before I get the new releases, because the new releases, they overcharge right out of the gate, and it's really not that much of a difference from your theater experience earlier in the year. So Twisters and Deadpool, I personally will wait just because I could save a little bit of money that way, and that's always what you have to do. And that's a great question, buddy. I really do appreciate that. It's something I wanted to talk about, so thank you so much. And then his next question, our last one of the week, is what's the toughest part about running a YouTube channel? So I kind of just touched on it a little bit in the last question, but it's really, the amount of time you put into this compared to the income, it might actually surprise a lot of people. I know it surprised me because I used to see people on YouTube, people who I've even talked to, like mid-level media, and I guess he doesn't really do anything anymore. Films at home. I'm not too sure what he's doing. I haven't really kept track of like what he's doing, but I used to think, oh, these guys, they have it, they're so well off. Look at them. They don't have that. Like, this is what they do. They're probably making really good money, and I was naive and ignorant to that. It's not true at all, and these videos take a lot of time to do. Like, I'm going away at the end of this week, and I wanted to have all these videos out for you guys. So I'm working from, I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I go to work from 8 to 6. I come home, film and edit, and I'm not going to bed till like 12 at night trying to make sure I have everything together. So I'm just sleeping, and what am I going to make on that? I don't know, like at the end of the month, you're lucky if you make about $200 with channel memberships. Channel memberships will actually pay more than what Google pays, and I don't know if a lot of people realize that. Like, it doesn't really add up, and you have to really be passionate about it. And that's the thing. I only that's why the videos I put out are videos that I want to put out, because it is all of my free time. So the hardest thing is really just managing the amount of time you have, putting these videos out, and then the amount of income you get from them. You can't really treat this like a job, because if you do, and I do this, it's going to really wear you down. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys, because I don't want to ever lie to you guys. It has been pretty hard lately for me, just because I've had a lot less time, and then spending hours editing, it kind of wears on my family and friends, because that's kind of what I hope one day to make this a future. I don't know if that's possible. So it gets really, really, really hard a lot of the time, especially when you're tired and exhausted. But I like to stick to a schedule. But, there are times, and especially like you might see like where I might pull a video, and it's just because I'm worn out. So it's just really hard with the amount of time. And I can tell you that there's other YouTube creators out there who are experiencing the same thing as me. So I don't like to bitch about it, because I know that I have friends out there who do the same thing as me, who are going through the same thing. They work a regular job, 50 to 60 hours a week to put food on their table for their family. And then, they got to spend all their free time recording videos and editing videos, because this is what they love to do. And that's always why I won't complain also, is because I absolutely love to review movies here on the channel. It just gets very discouraging. You put in like 6 hours into one video, and then it gets like 200 views on it. I know that a lot of YouTube creators have experienced this as well. And, a lot of that's just because YouTube, it'll just not push your video for whatever reason. Nobody's ever been able to crack the algorithm code. And it gets tough, it just becomes very discouraging to keep going sometimes when you're like, oh, man, I worked my ass off and nobody liked that video. And then there are times, though, the flip side where, it might not be something that you thought was going to do that good, and then it does really good, and it surprises the hell out of you. So it's really like a coin flip if it's going to be good or bad, because it's really out of your hands. It's how YouTube views the video, not necessarily how the people who watch the video. You might think that might be the case, but it's not the case at all. But the hardest thing, Sprazy, it's just balancing the time. You have to find the time to do it after your regular work schedule. I mean, people who don't have to work, I'm very jealous of those people. They definitely have a lot more free time. It makes it a lot easier for them. People who work from home, I don't have that luxury. I work at a butcher shop. So for me, I have to still do my regular Joe job, then come home and do this. And, sometimes there are movies I don't really want to watch, or I can't go to the movie theaters because I'm doing YouTube. It becomes very, very difficult. But thankfully, this is the thing I love most, obviously, except for my wife and my dogs, but I truly love YouTube and making these videos. It's something I always wanted to do, so I don't want to complain too much or sound like I'm complaining, but just to be honest with you, that's what it's like to run a YouTube channel. It can be very difficult, and it can definitely wear you down. That was a great question, Sprazy. I really do appreciate those questions. They were very thought-provoking. Usually you send in those quick questions, but I really did appreciate them, and hopefully that gives you guys some more insight to how I operate and how I run this YouTube channel. And I want to thank everybody who sent in questions for this week's episode of the Q&A show. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, leave some more questions down in the comment section below. Nothing is off the table, or wait for the post that comes out each and every single Tuesday. And while you guys are down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We also have channel memberships, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, or a channel producer like John Doe Juggalo or Jason Martin, or you want to become a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews, and Mr. Smelly Potato, you guys can find all that information in the description below. But if you got no money to throw away, guys, don't worry about it at all. We just hope you enjoy the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.